If you ask me, censorship is f***ing stupid, especially when it comes to creative things like music. Yet some people have felt the need to tell other people what words and ideas they should and shouldn't be offended by since people started writing songs thousands of years ago. Censorship in music is nothing new. It's f***ing ridiculous, but it's not new. In this video, I'm going to first dive into the history of musical censorship a bit. Then, I'll get to some modern examples of censorship in music, like how sophisticated algorithms decide what songs you do and don't get to hear. So, without further ado, let's f***ing do this shit. People have been writing songs for thousands of years. And for thousands of years, other people have bitched and moaned about the contents of those songs. It's usually the lyrics that piss people off, but sometimes it's the music itself. In the 13th century, Pope John XXII banned the use of polyphony, having two or more melodies going at the same time, because he felt that it would distract churchgoers from the message of God. According to Pope John Double Deuce, God made man too stupid to be able to follow along to a double melody. The Catholic Church would double down on musical censorship over the coming centuries. Songs about love, humor, everyday life, anything else even remotely secular, banned. So if you're a traveling troubadour in like the 15th century, you'd best be singing about what a great guy Jesus is because every single other topic was off limits. For centuries, musical censorship mostly came from religion. The Protestant Church would censor music that was considered too Catholic. The Catholic Church would censor any music that was considered not Catholic enough. But by the time the Baroque period rolled around and people started writing operas, governments and political elites started getting in on the music censorship game. Lots of operas contained themes of romantic freedom, political satire, and criticisms of the ruling class. Since the ruling class of the 17th and 18th centuries were no different than the ruling class of today, all greedy, power-hungry tyrants willing to do anything to maintain power, naturally, they loved the idea of silencing anyone who dared speak or sing out against them. So they censored any music critical of their interests. No musician was safe. Even the most musician-y of all musicians, Mozart himself, was forced to revise, aka censor, his opera The Marriage of Figaro because it was deemed to be too critical of the ruling class. Lots of famous composers and plenty of lesser-knowns faced censorship all throughout the 19th and 20th centuries all over the world. Now, if you're a typical modern-day 21st century American like me, you don't give a shit about opera or classical music, nor do you care what happened hundreds of years ago in parts of the world you've never ever been to. You probably don't even care what's happening in your own country at this very moment, so long as it's not happening in your town. Well, I hate to be Debbie Downer, or, Sally Censorship, but it is happening in your town and every other. America's got a long history of censoring music. Anti-slavery songs were banned in the South, and pro-slavery songs were banned in the North during the Civil War era. Early blues songs were often censored for being too sexually explicit. Jazz music and swing dancing were often banned for being too immoral and lewd, which was probably just old-timey racist white dude code for too black and poor. And speaking of swinging, Elvis Presley swinging his hips around on stage famously got him censored on TV, where they'd only film him from the waist up. The King's suggestive hip thrusts would just be the beginning of censorship in rock music. In the 1960s, lots of rock bands were forced, or at least asked nicely, to censor their music while performing live. In 1967, Ed Sullivan asked the Rolling Stones to change the lyrics of Let's Spend the Night Together to Let's Spend Some Time Together. Mick Jagger didn't have the Stones to tell Sullivan to f*** off, but he did passive-aggressively roll his eyes while singing the censored chorus. Yeah, what a rebel. Jim Morrison, on the other hand, wasn't a little kiss-ass bitch like Jagger. That same year, The Doors went on the Ed Sullivan Show. He asked Morrison to change Girl We Couldn't Get Much Higher to something else. What? I don't know, and neither does anyone else, because Jim Morrison refused to censor his lyrics, got on stage, and sang his song the way he wrote it. But unfortunately for him and his band, after the incident, the Doors were never invited back through the doors of the Ed Sullivan Show. But since the Dead Morrison Show would premiere less than 2 years later, it hardly mattered. Censorship in rock music would continue throughout the 1970s. From John Lennon's 1971 song Imagine catching from religious groups for saying, Imagine there's no heaven, to the Sex Pistols having God Save the Queen banned by the BBC in 1977 for being critical of the British monarchy, censorship gradually became more and more prominent throughout the decade. And though not usually thought of as censorship, many labels forced bands to release shortened versions of their songs, aka radio edits, to make them more radio-friendly. Whether you're cutting out words like sucker and mother, or you're shortening long intros, guitar solos, or whatever, that is censorship. Anytime a political, social, or religious group or figure tells an artist to modify his or her art in any way, shape, or form, That is censorship. And they do it because they're all a bunch of scared smoking nuggets. Do you want to show off your love of music with a comfortable, stylish, and affordable t-shirt like this one? How about one of these? You can find shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, and all sorts of other music-related merch at MusicBSharp.com. Whether you're looking for a gift to give a music-loving friend, or just want something for yourself you can use to make that friend jealous, at MusicBSharp.com, you'll find what you're looking for. MusicBSharp.com. Though censorship in music has been around forever, it wasn't until the mid-1980s that musical censorship rose to a whole new, completely and utterly absurd level. In 1985, a group of 4 overprivileged, overly sensitive old white ladies with way too much time on their hands formed what they called the Parents Music Resource Center, or PMRC for short, aka Paranoid Moms Rallying Cluelessly, Parents Misunderstanding Real Creativity, Preposterous Moms with Ridiculous Concerns, Prudish Moralistic Rules Committee, Politicians Making Rockers Conform, Please Make Rap Clean, Please Make Rock Clean, and Parents Making Claims. These dumb b****s led a massive charge to censor any and all music too steamy for their sensitive little ears. In 1985, the PMRC put out what they called the Filthy 15, a list of 15 songs they felt were too obscene for the public. The fact that songs like She Bop by Cyndi Lauper and High and Dry by Def Leppard were on the list, yet songs like I Wanna on You and Butt Lickin' by Gigi Allen weren't, tells you how little the PMRC actually knew about music. This misguided group even held a Senate hearing where they called rock stars like Dee Snider and Frank Zappa to testify before Congress. If you've never seen the hearing, I highly recommend watching it. It's hilarious. Snider especially made those stuck-up look absolutely. What was the end result of those stupid taxpayer money-wasting hearings? Those cool little parental advisory stickers you see on albums deemed to be too explicit for. But their plan backfired massively when millions of young, music-loving like myself went out of our way to buy albums with the parental advisory sticker. If an album had the sticker, you might not have known if the music would be good or not, but you at least knew you were going to hear some raunchy language. So by adding those parental advisory stickers to albums with lots of swears, the PMRC, thanks to a combination of the forbidden fruit effect mixed with a little touch of the Streisand effect, ended up helping to sell millions more explicit albums than if the group had never formed in the first place. Fortunately, the PMRC would eventually shut down in the mid-90s, but the late 80s and early 90s were filled with musical censorship. The rap group 2 Live Crew scored a victory for freedom of speech when a federal court overturned a Florida ruling that had declared their album As Nasty As They Wanna Be legally obscene. 2 Live Crew's next album, Banned in the USA, the title track being about their battle with musical censorship, was the first album to have the parental advisory sticker on the cover. And as a result, it sold way more copies than it ever could have without it. Another rap group getting censored around that time was NWA. Unsurprisingly, songs like F*** the Police were unpopular with the police, the law enforcement agency, not the band. I have no idea how Sting felt about Straight Outta Compton. What I do know is that a warning letter came straight out of the FBI to NWA's record label, warning them about the contents of their music. Because of this, many venues wouldn't allow them to perform F*** the Police or some of their other songs live. But by trying to censor them, the authorities only brought more attention to NWA and helped to launch them into legendary status in the hip-hop world. In the early 90s, lots of rock music was getting censored too. Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine immediately comes to mind. Gee, I can't imagine why, but for some reason, authority figures seem to have a problem with Zach singing, "F*** you, I won't do what you tell me," over and over again. So, radio stations and MTV heavily censored the song, completely changing the meaning of the lyrics. Some edits even removed like 60% of the words entirely and any meaning they might have had left with them. Killin' in the Name is an obvious example, but tons of rock and rap songs from the 90s were censored on MTV and the radio because, well, those were pretty much the only places you heard music back then. Bad words often got silenced, bleeped out, or replaced with much less offensive ones, despite making much less sense. The 1990s might have seen the end of the PMRC, but it wasn't the end of musical censorship. When Eminem took the world by storm in the early 2000s, some entire countries banned his albums for promoting violence with songs like Kim and Stan. And as recently as 2020, the Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion song Wet Ass, better known simply as WAP, caused all sorts of controversy and faced heavy censorship from radio stations and social media platforms. As you can see, censorship in music is nothing new. But over the past few years, since streaming services and social media platforms have taken over, musical censorship has not only become much more prominent, but also more subtle, so much so that you may not even realize it. Where do you listen to music? YouTube? Apple, Spotify. These services are all powered by powerful algorithms that decide which new songs you get exposed to and which ones you don't. For example, right now, if you were to search for songs about Mario's brother and what he did to that greedy-o in New York City, you won't find any because the algorithm is suppressing them. You'll likely only get news videos from trusted sources. Guess what? That's censorship, and the worst kind because it's not transparent. If you listen to a song and you hear a bleeped word, you know it's been censored. But if the recommendation and search features of whatever platform you use are hiding songs and videos about a certain topic, you have no way of knowing what's being censored. And that's the worst kind of censorship of them all, because they're literally gatekeeping what you can and can't see and what you can and can't listen to. So why do some people feel the need to censor other people's music? Well, because they're a bunch of p***s with fragile little ears, that's why. Artists create. Little baby bitches censor. It's all about control. They think they know what's best for you. They think that you're too much of a fragile little snowflake to hear the word f***. I mean, it's not like you don't know I'm saying f*** when I say f*** and it gets bleeped. You'd have to be a f*** to think that bleeping words is protecting anybody. Censoring music isn't now, nor has it ever been about protecting the purity and innocence of the people. It's always been about maintaining control and protecting power. Whether that's the power of the church, the government, or some giant tech company, censorship has been used for thousands of years to control information flow and influence public opinion. Is it ever going to stop? No f***ing way. As long as people keep writing songs about being oppressed, those doing the oppressing will do their best to suppress whatever message the artist is trying to get off their chest. And unless we address how this censorship mess has progressed, I guess the process will continue to be a success as the topics musicians can cover without being censored become less and less. Like a pretty girl in an ugly dress, musical censorship obscures the beauty the artist is trying to express. But I digress. I will, however, lastly confess that my answer to the question, is musical censorship stupid, a resounding yes. When it comes to censorship in music, I've really only scratched the surface of this topic. It's something I could go on and on about all day long, but you get the idea. People have been censoring each other's music since people started making it, and they'll continue to do so until they stop making music, which will be never because music is deeply ingrained in the human experience. Unfortunately, so is greed, power, and the desire to control others. So people will forever write song after song, and some people will forever be there to tell you that singing along is wrong. You're so annoying. If you want to watch the uncensored version of this video, visit my Patreon page where you can find exclusive content, get early access to regular videos, and more. Link in the description. If you like this shirt, it's available in lots of colors and sizes at MusicBSharp.com, along with lots of other funny music-related merch. Link also in the description. And if you want to hear some of my original music, click that link in the description, or search for this dude on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you listen to music.